Really, we're going to dig into how to report and monitor SEO changes. So there's a few things before we get to some of the specific reporting that I want to cover. Some of it will be foundational Looker Studio items that we're going to go through, and then we're going to get pretty specific on how you can change up some of the reporting that you're doing to really show the value of the work you're providing. So just a quick about me. So my name is John, as you heard. I'm the founder of Exponential Growth. So we're an agency that focuses primarily on Google Analytics, reporting, and some SEO work. We typically work with agencies and consultants in a white label capacity. So you can see some of our top kind of service offerings are here, and you can check out some of our reviews on Clutch as well. So with that, we want to jump right into some of the foundations of Looker Studio. So I'm probably going to call it Data Studio a bunch of times since I'm still getting used to the name here, but we're going to walk through some fundamentals. If you're more experienced with Looker Studio, this will be more of a refresher, and we will get to some more advanced tactics, advanced reporting tips that you could implement. So this will be more of a refresher, but if you're new, this will help get you up to speed with just some of the basics that you'll need to know before we dive into specific reporting for on-page SEO. So we're going to jump over to Data Studio here and just show an example of a report that we're going to look at. So there's a lot of things to get familiar with when you first get started with Data Studio. Really, these two navigations here are going to be pretty important as you're getting started and starting to build out reports. So I just want to cover a few things here. We won't spend too much time on this, but just to get some fundamentals out of the way. So here you have your menu where you could add pages. So this is really important. If I go to view mode, you'll see actually this report has multiple pages that we can click through on. You can make a one-page report as well, but this will give you the option of creating new pages. You have all different styling options now, which is great. Then we're going to look at data sources. So this is going to be very important. If you click here, you'll start to see all of the different data sources that are available to you. For SEO, the main ones we're going to be looking at are Google Analytics and Search Console. But if you're doing other types of campaigns, there's third-party tools like Supermetrics or 2-minute reports that'll let you connect to Facebook ads and different sources. So you can really pull all your data into one spot. The Google Sheet is also worth noting. If you have a platform or a tool you're using that doesn't natively connect to Data Studio, you can download the data and put it into a Google Sheets. So you can still visualize some of the data you want to report on, even if it's not a standard connector. So basically the process here is just clicking through onto Google Analytics or Search Console, and then you can select your account. So that's always the first thing you need to do in the report is just get your data sources selected. Then we're going to get into this add a chart tool here, where these are all the visualizations and options that you have available to you that Google has built out. So you'll see time series charts, tables, scorecards, all different visuals that you could pull into the report. This I also wanted to cover. So there's a community visualization section, which is really great. This actually will allow you to get new visuals that Google hasn't built, but third-party companies. So you'll see Supermetrics has built some, and a lot of other tools as well. So you can get a funnel chart, all different visuals that didn't come natively with Data Studio, and you can even actually build your own visuals as well. Then just one other tool here. We're not going to use this a whole lot today, but for client reporting. But if you are doing an internal report, these controls can be pretty powerful. You have the option of adding a drop-down menu, which the great thing about this is this connects to all the charts. So if we were to pull in query here, we could actually filter the charts below based on a search query. So these can allow you to do a lot for analysis really quickly. But for client reports, we typically don't like to use a lot of the functionality where the reader of the report has to click buttons and configure it. So we're going to get into that a little bit later on with some of the reporting. And then just two last things here are more just about styling. So you have the option of adding images, adding text boxes. We highly recommend using the text boxes here when you're making charts. So you'll see actually this chart is separate from the text box. So we'll actually build the text box so we could add some insights and some additional information and then drag the chart inside of it. That way we're not just having a chart without any context. So we'll cover off this a little bit later, but it's important to just see some of that functionality. And the theme and layout, Google has some pre-built ones, but you could also customize all your colors, all your styling, and utilize this tool here. So those are some of the basics there in terms of just the navigation that you can be familiar with. When you actually click on a chart, it's important to get familiar with the chart builder here as well. So for this first chart, we're connected to our Google Analytics data source. If we wanted to change that, we can click on it, and actually here's our other data sources that are attached to this account. We could also add a new one potentially. Then you'll see our dimensions and metrics. So this is where you can select exactly what you want to report on. We're looking at a time series, so we're typically always going to have a date here. If this was a different type of chart, maybe we'd want to see the channels that are driving the most revenue. We could change that to channel, and then we'll just do one example here. Then this report will update, and we could see like which channels are driving the most revenue. One other note that some people haven't seen is there's some data sources you're going to work with that don't have month. They only have this date field. But what's really nice about Data Studio is you don't necessarily need the month field to report on it. You can actually use this pencil icon here and change the date type. So if we go over here, and then now we have a bunch of other preset date ranges. So we could do year, month. And now this updates the same way it was before. So if you run into that, particularly with Google Search Console, doesn't typically have month as an option, you can configure the date dimension that way. So you could still report by month or by quarter. But because Google Analytics does have it already built in, we can just go back to month of year here. So metrics here. So this will be the metric we're reporting on. Right now we're looking at revenue. You could change this by clicking and then really search for any metrics that you want. If you want to report on traffic, you can do that. You just need to find the metric there. You can add multiple metrics as well. Typically when we're doing a time series chart, and we'll get into this a little more as we progress, we prefer to just have one metric we're focused on. But you could potentially have multiple ones. If you want to show like the relationship between users and revenue, you could do something like this. I don't tend to like having more than two here. Like as you'll start to see, if we do a third one, it just starts to get hard to analyze and understand what's happening the more metrics you add to a chart like this. So we really like to keep these hyper-focused on kind of one KPI and then just have multiple charts below. So that'll be the metric options. Then you have your sorting. So typically you're going to do ascending if you're doing a date range, but you do have the option of flipping it if you want. Then we get to the date control. So this is really important to understand. If you set it to auto, whatever date range you select up here, all the charts that are selected to auto will use that date range. When you're doing a time series report, I tend to like to do a custom date range because I typically want a longer period than just 31 days or 30 days. So that's where you'll start utilizing this. So Google has a lot of built out options where you could just quickly click and select the one you want. I really like this advanced option because you could set up rolling date ranges where what we've done here is we've set it so it always ends 1 month back from today. So we'll be looking at December, and then it starts 13 months back. So you'll see we're looking at December 2021 to December 2022. The benefit of that is next month, this chart will automatically update to January, and we won't need to go in and change anything. So it's a really good way to set up these time series charts where you don't have to spend time updating date ranges every month. And just the last two things here we're going to look at. One of them is filtering. So filtering is really powerful. This is going to be how you're going to change the data we're looking at. And when we get to on-page optimization reporting, we're going to be building some filters that just look at pages we've actually worked on and optimized. But you have tons of options here. So I have some that are already built out. But if you were to create a new one, we'll just look at this quickly. You have the option to include or exclude. Let's say we want to see only organic search traffic. We can do filter by channel. Then you have some options here. We'll do equals to, and then we know the dimension is organic search, and we can name this organic search. And when we create this and save it, it's now going to filter this report to only look at our organic search traffic. So this is going to be how you're going to be able to do a lot of customization later on. This is going to be one of the methods using the filtering, but we'll close out of that for now. Cross filtering is actually another really good feature to be aware of. We're going to cover this a little bit more as we progress, but I'm going to show one example. So if we skip ahead to this section here where we're going to cover this, but this is looking at only pages we've optimized and then how the traffic is trending. If you enable the cross filtering option, what that allows you to do is actually click on one of these pages and it'll actually automatically filter the chart above. So this can be really powerful if you're doing analysis. If you have a lot of pages you've worked on, you can quickly start clicking through and seeing how that specific page is trending. So if this was a page we've optimized in October, we can start to see that clicks are trending up just from this page. So for client reporting, we don't always use this feature. This would be more for internal reporting, where you have an analyst actually clicking through and trying to analyze what's happening at a higher rate. For client reporting, we tend to like to have the filters already set, so clients don't need to actually click on anything. They could just get the insights right away. So that'll be one final feature that's good to be aware of. So really that I know we went through that quickly, but those are really the main things you're going to be utilizing on a kind of fundamental level in Data Studio. And we're going to start to build on that as we progress through the slides. So before we get into reporting, I also want to cover just some styling and some best practice that we've used after doing just reports for other agencies, tons of client reports. We've kind of come up with a few things that tend to make the reports a little more insightful. So when you click on a chart, we looked at setup. You also have your styling options. So this is going to be where you can start to configure and change colors, add labels, and do all sorts of things. What I want to show is, let's add a new chart here, and you can kind of see how we go about editing a brand new chart and how we would style it. So I'm going to change the date range really fast. Let's look at a little bit more data. So we'll do last year. So this is by default what the chart's going to look like. If we go to styling, what we tend to like to do, we'll start from the top. With this chart, you do have the option of using bars or lines. So that's kind of preference. I know some people like to use lines or bars in certain situations. We tend to do it more based on preference. So we'll leave it set for, let's actually change it to bars so we could build the way the chart looks. Then you have some options. Data labels are one of them. Data labels are nice that they'll show the number, but when you have lots of dimensions here, so we have lots of months, we have 13, it makes it very messy. So if you are going to use these, I tend to like using these when there's less data, if we're looking at maybe 3 to 5 items here. But if you do want to use it in this scenario, Google does give you a couple options where you could actually make it more readable. So one is using compact numbers, which you'll see it starts to condense the numbers there. The other one is controlling the decimals. So in this case, instead of using Google's auto, I would actually probably set it to 0. And then now we can start to see the data labels are just a lot more clean, a lot easier to see what's happening. So if you're going to use these, I would pretty much always configure these settings here just to make it more readable here and less noisy. You do have the option of showing trend lines or reference lines. We tend to like the reference lines sometimes. You could do a couple of things. If you have a KPI, you can actually put that in the chart. So let's say 100,000 was our KPI. Now we have this line that shows us if we're above or below the target. And you can change the name to like KPI or whatever you want to call it, and it will update here. This can be pretty valuable. You can also do an average. So if we go to metric here, this will show us what our monthly average is, and we can see, are we below or above that average? So just another way to add context to the charts. We tend to like to make these in this style here with 1, just to make it not as pronounced, so it doesn't take away too much from the rest of the chart, but just adds a little bit more context. So we'll leave this in for now. But again, you don't have to use these. If we close out of it, we can go back to the chart. Then we get to access. So one thing to note here, we tend to like to use auto for the maximum. If you use auto, Google will keep increasing this as your data increases. So if next month we have 800,000, if I actually set this to 600,000, the chart would start to break and it wouldn't increase. So like I'll set it for 300,000, you'll see the bars just go to the top. So auto tends to work really well if you don't want to have to edit this. In this case, the data label is cut off, so you could consider manually putting it in, and now we could actually read the data label there. But then you will have to remember to update that in future months. The minimum is important. I like to set it to 0 because sometimes Google will adjust it, and they might actually set the minimum to a number like this where it doesn't start at 0 and it skews your chart. So I typically just like to put a 0 in just so I know it's always going to start where I want it. Then we're going to scroll down to grid lines. So grid lines, we tend to like to make transparent and get rid of. A lot of times these just add noise to the chart and they don't always add a lot of value. There's some specific cases where you might want them, but in general, we like to make those transparent just to clean up the chart a bit and kind of get rid of some of that noise and distraction from what we're really trying to show. And then finally, there's some font settings and color settings, but it's the legends. So by default, the legend will be there. If there's only one metric we're looking at, we almost entirely remove the legend. If there's multiple things you're showing, you do tend to need that. So if we had 2 metrics, we would probably leave the legend on, but because we're just focusing on one thing and we're going to use the chart description to talk about what we're looking at, I almost always get rid of that to make the chart a little bit cleaner. So some other options here on background colors and borders, we're going to leave those off for now. But basically what you're left with then is a much cleaner chart that's focused on one thing that we're trying to get across. And then we have some of our insights above. So for the text box, some of the things we like to look for to really complete the chart would be using a title that's actually descriptive of what the main thing we're trying to get across, what that is. So in this case, we're really just looking at like a record high in revenue, a big increase from the prior month. So we're highlighting that. And then we use the description to give a little more context on why it may have happened. So in this case, we saw that direct and referral traffic are really the main source of the growth. If I was doing something with referral, like a link building campaign, and that was the result of the referral traffic, we'd note that as well. So the more specific you can be on the context here, the better. And then we like to include the data source. So where is this data actually coming from? That's going to be a very common question that your clients ask. So having that on each chart is just a quick way to reference, and we all know exactly where this data is coming from. You can also move this to the bottom of the chart if you prefer. So you have a lot of customization when you use these text boxes. Now, if you don't want to write custom insights into your reports and you're looking to do a more automated report, then typically what we do is just kind of write what the chart is looking at, something that you won't need to change. So in this case, we're looking at conversion rate trends, and then it's coming from Google Analytics. So you can keep it as simple as that. But if you're actually walking a client through the report or sending it to them, we really like actually writing in these insights onto each chart. That way now this chart tells a complete story. We don't need someone to interpret it and try to figure out what they're looking at. We're giving them the main insights right inside of each chart. So ideally we would do this for every chart that we're looking at. So those are kind of our just fundamentals of how to use Data Studio, and then how we tend to like to style and showcase some of the data in the reports. So now that we got that out of the way, we're going to start to get a little more specific on how you can really report and show the value of some of the SEO work that you're doing. So this is our preferred report structure. So there's really no right or wrong way to structure a report. This is just based on our experience, how we tend to like to structure and actually create the framework for the report. So typically we'll start with a summary and insights page. So in this example, we have one here. All of this is customizable, so you can really put whatever you want here, but we like to take some of the top insights from the slides and put them all on one screen. And then typically at the bottom here, we're going to paste in 1 or 2 charts from the report that we feel like are the most compelling and really tell the story. So that way we basically have a 1-page report that somebody can look at and get the key insights, plus see a couple of the data and charts backing it up. And then if you have someone who really wants to get into the weeds and see more specifics, they have all these pages to do that. So we like to lead off with this. Then I typically like, even though we're doing an SEO report, I like to start with overall website trends and then get into SEO specific trends. The reason for that is this gives us a lot of context before we start drilling down into what we've actually done and the pages we've actually optimized. I want to know how the website is doing as a whole. Maybe we'll see they reduce their budgets on paid media, and now branded search on SEO has gone way down, and that's impacting our traffic numbers. You want to know all that before you really start getting into tactics. So we don't have to spend a ton of time on this, but we do like to have a few slides to start so we have that information. And then we like to look at SEO specific trends so we know how organic search is performing. And then finally, that's when we'll start getting more specific into pages we've worked on and some different ways you could showcase what you've actually done. So You'll see that structure here where we have our summary, we have our website trends here. And again, what this is showing here is all sources on the website, what's happening with revenue, what's happening with conversion rate, and what's happening with traffic. So right away, we could see overall, all the numbers are going up. Then I like to look at the why behind it. So we'll look at the channels that are driving the traffic and revenue. So here we could see the top 5 traffic sources and then what the revenue per user is. So this is good to know. Basically, where does the traffic come from? So organic search is a pretty prominent channel. So organic search would have a big impact on the overall numbers. Revenue per user is good to look at. What this might tell us is organic search is driving a ton of traffic, but it has the lowest revenue per user. We might want to do some type of conversion rate optimization there to see if we can improve those numbers. If this was not e-commerce and it was lead gen, we'd probably use conversion rate here to do a similar analysis. But then we can actually look at each channel and which ones went up and which ones went down. So we know basically why did we get an increase. So in this case, it looks like direct and referral are both up over 100%. And that's really where the traffic increase is coming from. So again, we want to know that information before we start analyzing organic search. If everything went down, that might mean maybe there's some seasonality happening, and that's good information to know before we start looking at what we've done. So that's where we'll lead off. Then we'll get into a similar report, but just filter down to organic search only. So now we're looking at revenue, traffic, and organic impressions. So now that we know what's happening with the website, we can start to, at a high level, look at 3 KPIs we might have for organic search. I would customize these 3 based on whatever kind of your KPIs are for the campaign. But I like these to be pretty broad metrics that tell kind of the story of what's happening overall. So with this, the way you would set up the filter here, we looked at it a little bit earlier, but all you would need to do is either add a segment for organic traffic or just create that filter that we looked at, that we did earlier for organic search. So that's typically where we'll start. Once we have that information and we've shown that to the client, this is where we're going to actually start looking at how you can report on what you're doing and what you're actually optimizing on a monthly or yearly basis. So the first one we're going to look at is just overall trends for optimized pages. This is the logic here for the filter that you could set up. All you need to do is swap in these landing page URLs for whatever pages you've worked on, and then use this pipe bar, which signifies or, to do multiple pages. So the way we're going to show that in the next slide here is in this report. So what we're looking at here is all the pages we've optimized and how is the organic clicks trending over time. So here we can quickly see that as of October, we're starting to see a really nice trend up. Really going back to July, you could see we were kind of in that 50 to 70 range. Then our optimized pages improved, and then now they've improved once again. So we're really able to just look at what we're working on and not all the other pages that may be contributing positively or negatively to the website. Again, you have the option to see the specific pages. If you're using that filter I showed, it's pretty powerful to be able to click on one of these and see just the traffic to this one blog. So in this case, we could see, okay, this blog is starting to get some traffic. Pretty low volume so far, but it's at least getting those initial clicks. So this is just a really good way to start before you start getting into some more detail on what you've actually done. So the other thing you can do with this, we're looking at optimized pages. You could easily replicate this for new content, and you could do the same filter, but just show new content that you've published. And then you could see the trends on how new content is doing, and then you could see the specific URLs below. So there's a lot of flexibility with this filter here. And we're going to look at how you actually build it. So if we go into this chart, we're just using a filter here. So typically you would go and add a new one. I'm just going to go in and edit this one. And we could just see we're doing includes, landing page, that contains, and then here we're just listing out all the pages separated by the pipe bar. So on a monthly basis, you can keep adding to this, which is the good thing about it. So every month you can go in and just add your new pages, and then you'll have all this tracking at all times. So once you have that, one thing we really like starting to do is actually show how different tactics are performing as a whole. So this is code that you can copy and paste into your account, but it's customizable as well. So when we look at this report, what we're actually showing here is all of the different tactics we're doing and how those are performing in terms of overall traffic. So normally what we would do, if this was a client report, we would have this filter down to just 1 or 2. But for example purposes, you can actually use that cross filtering. So we can see, let's say we want to see how our SEO testing campaign is doing. If we click on that, now we can see all the URLs we've worked on and did title tag testing on and how that's trending. So the power in this is we can quickly see what tactics are working the best. And then you can easily make the case in this area, we probably want to do more SEO testing. We're seeing massive results from this. Either we want to invest more into it or shift some budget from somewhere else into this tactic. If something wasn't working, like let's look at new content now. So new content is actually trending down. This might mean maybe we do less, or it might mean that we need to dig into how do we fix this. So either we need to publish more, maybe the stuff we are publishing isn't high enough quality, but we can see all these different tactics that we're doing and really drill into what's working. So these are standard ones that we typically use. You can customize these to anything that you do for a client. You can even have link building in here as another option. As long as you know what pages you're optimizing or driving links to, that's all you need to actually build this. These tend to be the ones we see commonly, but you can customize this any way you want. So the way you actually build this is by going into the data source. And so if you click edit on a data source, this is where you can start doing some more advanced things. So if you click on add field, you can actually create your own custom dimension or metric. So because I've already built this, I'm going to show, if we just type in tactics, here's the one we've built. And this is that code we showed in the previous slide. So you could just paste this in to the formula bar. And basically all you need to do is edit the pages here. So for this one that's called on-page optimization, you would just change these URLs to be the ones you've actually worked on. Same thing for new content. You could just paste in all the blogs or new content you've published. You can even change these names. Like if you don't do SEO testing and you do link building, you could just change this to link building and put in those URLs here instead. So you have a ton of options to customize this, but ideally you match this up with what you're actually doing. And then you can see at a tactic level, all the things you're doing and quickly gauge what's working the best, what's not working, and then provide recommendations to your client on what you need to do more of, or maybe what you need to shift out of if it's not working. So this is going to be one that you're going to use quite a bit, and feel free to just copy this code, edit it to your pages, and then paste it right in as we looked at. Next, we're going to look at brand versus non-brand. So this is a really common one that we see quite often. And it provides a lot of context, again, onto your campaigns. So in this case, we're looking at brand and non-brand traffic and then brand and non-brand impressions. So what's interesting about this, if we look at the impressions, so the light blue is non-brand. So non-brand's actually been improving really since February. And it was really brand that was trending down up until recently. So I know previously we saw that overall organic traffic was trending down and just recently started to trend up. But here you could actually see if you've been focused on non-brand keywords and optimizing a lot of content, there's actually been growth that you might have missed if you didn't have this type of reporting. So again, this one is going to be built similar to how we built the last one by actually editing the data source and creating the new brand versus non-brand dimension. So you would click add field. I'm just going to go in and edit this. And basically, simply, you would just change the brand name here to whatever your client's brand name or brand queries are. You have the option of using the pipe bar to add multiple. So if you need to do an or and add, maybe they have a few different ways somebody searches for their brand name, you could add all of those here. And then it's going to group those to brand, and then everything else will be considered non-brand. So this is one you really typically only have to set up once, and then you'll have that capability in your data source. So after that, what we're going to look at is target keyword reporting. So it's very similar to target pages or optimized pages, but we're just going to build the same thing for queries and paste in all the keywords that we've optimized for that we want to track. So the way we typically do that is like this. And there's a couple ways you can. We like this interactive report where here we have our average positions. It's almost like a rank tracker in a way of all the target keywords that we have. And then here's the clicks from all those keywords. So you can quickly see trends. But what's more powerful is actually being able to click on one keyword and then see the data there. So here we can see our average position has improved. We're in the top 3 positions. Clicks are trending up. So you can pretty much click on any keyword that you want and see how things are trending. So we can click on this template one, same thing. Rankings are improving significantly each month. Not a lot of clicks yet because it looks like it's a low volume term, but There is one there. So you can quickly see what's happening here. Let's do one more. Here, not a lot of movement here. We're kind of stuck on page 3. So again, this is a really good way to see the aggregated numbers of all the keywords you're working on, but then actually have the ability to click on individual ones and just see individual performance as well. So again, this is just built with a filter, similar to the one we looked at for landing pages. Now, impressions by position, this is one of my favorite reports to put into Looker Studio. This is more intensive to set up. So here's the steps, but there's a lot of customization you need to do to build this. So I'm going to show one quick example. So first, what this actually shows, it's a really interesting report to build. So we're looking at how often or how many impressions we have at each of the top 10 positions on page 1 of Google. And then we have page 2 here aggregated, and then page 3 and so on. So when you look at just one chart, it doesn't tell you much, but the real value in this is actually comparing this period versus the prior period. So we're looking at the last 3 months versus the prior 3 months. So here what we see is position 1 impressions have improved slightly. They're up about 2,000 from the previous period, but then we're starting to see a lot of growth in position 3 to 10. If we look at position 3, we have 11,000 impressions. The previous period, we only had 4,000. So you can really start to see how your visibility is trending at all of these positions. And this is also really valuable as well, page 2 to 6. So you're not going to be getting traffic on page 2 or 3, but a lot of times when you publish new content, you may not be seeing any traffic increase for a few months. But typically what we'll see in this report is page 2 to page 5 impressions are starting to go way up. And that'll tell us that those pages are starting to get indexed, they're starting to rank. And ultimately, as we get some of these impressions onto page 1, we're going to see a big boost. So it's a really good way to report on new content before you're actually at the point where you're getting a lot of traffic. So there's kind of 2 ways to look at it. On how are we doing on page 1, but also are we building up our page 2 to page 6 primarily through new content, which gives us opportunity in future months. So this takes a lot of customization to build. And it does require blending data. We're not going to go super deep into blending data today. But really, I'm going to show this quickly on how you would actually build this. So you would go to your Google Search Console data source and create this custom metric here. It looks complex, but all you need to do is paste this in. And this is what gives us those different positions and the page groupings. And then once you've done that, what you need to do is actually blend the data here. So since I've already done it, it's showing what we're doing, but basically we're blending the same data source, but we're adding average position and that new metric, and then blending that with impressions. And again, we have date and query as the joining functions, but really this is what you want to do is make sure you have average position and the new dimension, and then impressions selected. Then we're actually going to create in dimension, we're going to paste in a formula here, this one. And then we're also going to paste in under sorts, this formula. So we'll have the code ready. So all you'll need to do is copy and paste this. But essentially, once you configure all that, once you paste all that in, you'll actually have access to this report, which can provide a lot of insights into how your campaigns are performing. And you can configure the date ranges any way you want. Finally, what we're going to look at is content type reporting. So here is the code. And what we're doing here is just looking at how sections of the website are performing as a whole. So again, if this was a client report, I wouldn't have all 5 of these in here. I would have this filter to just 1 or 2. So let's say you're really focused on product pages, or maybe you're building out a lot of resources. I would have this filtered so you're just looking at 1 and not looking at 5 at once. But again, we could use that filtering that we built out and look at, let's say we want to look at just resource content. Now we're going to filter the trends to look at only resource pages on the website. And here we could see actually some nice growth. And again, you could configure this however you want based on the website that you're working on. All you need to do is go into the data source again, add a new field. Since we already have it, we're going to go under type here. This is what we've called it. And basically, you're going to paste in our formula and just configure this any way you want. So basically here we have blog posts. So you can call this whatever you want. And we're looking for just the word blog in the URL. If your client has a different name for their blog, you can paste that in. Product pages, again, you're looking for something in the URL that will match the pages. So all of this can be configured exactly as you want. Then we have kind of about us pages, careers pages. So you can, if you had service pages, you could just copy one of these lines. Let's say you had more pages, and then just enter a new one and then configure this one here. So you can really build out as many page groupings as you want. And it's a really good way to see how certain sections of the website are performing. Again, if you're hyper focused on optimizing a certain area of the website, it's really nice to be able to see how that section is performing as a whole. So like if we look at, again, filtering it down to product pages, we could see how much traffic the product pages are driving. Again, you could change this to revenue if you would rather look at that instead of traffic. So all of this is configurable, but this is really going to tie back to, again, what are you specifically working on? And then how do we isolate the data to just look at that? So that's really the main thing there. So again, all of this, the beauty of Data Studio is all customizable. You might find that in your client report, you only want to have a few pages, and maybe some of these you use internally. So that is always an option here as well. So that's it for the presentation today. We're going to make this available. So all of this code you guys will have access to, and you'll be able to just copy and paste this in and start customizing some of your data sources. So before we get into Q&A, I did want to have one offer for you guys, for anyone who stayed on the webinar and actually made it to this point. We're going to do an analysis of your reports that you're giving to your clients. So we can only take 10 people for this. So the first 10 people to message me on LinkedIn, you could just say you're interested in it. We'll, for free, just analyze your client's report and send you over some bullet points on what we would recommend changing to make your reports more impactful. So because you guys stayed and with us today, we'll be doing that over LinkedIn. So feel free to go to my profile, shoot me a message, and we'll coordinate on what we need access to in order to send you that analysis. Perfect. So that is it for the presentation.
Great. Thank you, John. That was really insightful. Thank you for sharing your docs and resources. And now let's take a few minutes to answer questions of our audience. And guys, I just wanted to remind you to type your questions into the YouTube chat. And to begin, let's take a look at the questions that our attendees sent us before the webinar. And you guys have some time to leave your questions here in the chat. So the first question is, what is your recommended way to get started with making reports and visualizing data?
Yeah, I think the first thing is just starting to get familiar with the Data Studio or Looker Studio interface. So kind of in that, I would rewatch that initial section where we went over some of the fundamentals and really start clicking around and using those. Once you know how things work and how you can start building charts and manipulating the data in Data Studio, then it really just comes down to you thinking about what you want to show, and then now you have the tools and you know exactly how to build what you have in your head and what you want to show the client. So I'd recommend just start using it, get familiar with it. There are a lot of free templates out there you could start with as well, but I prefer kind of actually playing around with it, building your own charts. And then once you've done that, you'll be kind of on your way to actually doing some more of that customization.
Great. Thank you. And the second one, how do you recommend showcasing bad news in the SEO reports?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to do that. The way we've outlined it, it's really important to kind of isolate where that's coming from. So let's say organic traffic's trending down. I don't want to just show that traffic's trending down. We want to actually show why is it trending down and maybe where it's coming from. So maybe as we looked at their branded search is going down, so less people are searching for them. That might not be due to what you're doing. That might be a brand awareness problem. So then you could go back to the client and show them you might need to invest more in brand awareness campaigns, or maybe there's some seasonality. So that's the first thing, is actually looking at why are the metrics that you care about going down. If it's related to what you're doing, the key is just having a plan. So you want to be transparent about it, but you want to actually come to the call with actually next steps. Instead of just sharing bad news, you want to actually take the time to think about what can we do differently, what are we going to change, and how are we going to actually rebound from whatever metrics trending down. So we find a lot of times that really strengthens the relationship with your client as well. When you go with, show them the bad news, but actually have a plan and recommendations on what you're going to do going forward.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And what mistakes in SEO reports should be avoided? Maybe common mistakes.
Yeah, common mistakes. I would say the biggest ones that we tend to see when we look at reporting, one of them is having too much noise and too much clutter on a page. So sometimes we're just trying to put in as many metrics as possible on one page because we think maybe they are important, but maybe there's some that aren't as important. So really thinking about reducing the noise so you can actually kind of get the points across that and tell the story that you want to tell through the reporting. That's one of the biggest things we see on a lot of reports. Outside of that, I'd also say kind of the structure and the flow of the report. Sometimes we'll see that there's not always as much thought put into that. Like things are kind of get pieced together over time. Maybe new pages were added, but really thinking about like how do you want the report to flow so it makes sense and users keep getting more context and more detail as you progress through the report.
Great. So let's turn to the questions from the chat. I see several questions now here. So the question from Ekaterina, how to make reports that are easy for the client to read? Is it worth adding conclusions and recommendations as text notes?
I tend to always do that, is adding actually insights to these reports. That's the one thing that can't be automated, is actually going in, writing recommendations. I don't like to leave just it up to interpretation. You really want to make sure that you're actually going in, reviewing what's happening, and actually kind of showing that to the client and giving recommendations. So I think it is worth adding. We tend to like to do it on every chart, actually interpret the chart and add the insights. If that's too much or you don't kind of have the scope to be able to put that level of detail into the report, at least adding a few insights up front with like the high level takeaways, what you've actually worked on, maybe what's coming up next is a good place to start. So, and just last thing on that as well for making reports easy to read. Sometimes you'll find with clients that really depends on the client, how you know them, your relationship with them. If you know that they maybe only need to see a few high level metrics, you can make a pretty simple report that might just have 1 or 2 pages and it just has what they care about. If you're working with someone who's maybe more involved in the marketing campaigns and is doing some of the work as well, they might want that extra level of detail. So that really comes to kind of just knowing the audience of the reports and then building it based on what you think they're going to need to see and want to see.
Oh, thank you. Makes sense. And one more question. How useful is to build data studio report based on Screaming Frog reports?
Yeah, it can be pretty powerful with Screaming Frog. The way you would do it is you would export your Screaming Frog data into a Google Sheet and then connect that Google Sheet to Looker Studio. So the nice thing about that is Screaming Frog, notoriously, it has really good data if you know how to work with it. It doesn't always have the best visuals inside of Screaming Frog. So because of that, connecting to Data Studio is a really good way to actually add visuals to like a technical audit that you might do. So we do recommend it. You could build it in Google Sheets as well. So we've seen a lot of templates where you could import your Screaming Frog data and have visuals there. But having it in Data Studio can really be a good way to kind of change your technical audits and make it into more of an interactive and kind of presentation style and make it more digestible too. So I do recommend at least trying it out and seeing if you like using it that way. But the Google Sheet option will be a great way to try it.
Okay, thank you. And I just wanted to add that if you are a user of Serpstat platform, you can also use Google Sheets and Google Data Studio because we have also the integration with these services. So, and know that Screaming Frog is also a popular tool, and a lot of our business partners and our friends use that. So thank you very much for the answer. So one more question from Vlad. What other data visualization tools do you use and can recommend to make SEO reporting easier and more efficient?
Yeah, there's a lot of options nowadays on different tools that do this. We tend to like Looker Studio, one, because it's a free option, so anyone could get started with it. But if you want to use other tools, to be honest, Google Sheets is always good. Before Looker Studio, we would do a lot of reporting in Google Sheets, just kind of downloading your data into there and making your visuals right there. There's other companies too. DataBox is a popular one we've used. And there's a few others as well. But Google Sheets and Looker Studio tend to be our top two that we use.
Okay, great. And the question from Vladimir, what level of detail should the SEO reports go into?
Yeah, I think again, that comes back to knowing the audience of the report. So if you're giving the SEO report to an executive, you might just need a few high level metrics on, is SEO driving more conversions? How are things trending? If you're going to someone who's maybe more experienced in SEO, or maybe they're involved in the process, that's when we tend to like to have more detail. And that's also why we structure the reports in the way we do, where the first page is kind of a 1-page report with insights and 2 or 3 charts. That could be fine for the executive. And then you have extra reports that are more kind of optional if somebody needs to dig into them. So yeah, that's always going to depend on who you're reporting for. So I would always ask yourself that. And once you know that, then you could really start to think about, what do they care about? What do they want to see?
Great, thank you very much. It looks like we've covered all the questions. And John, would you like to add or highlight anything else before we wrap
No,
up?
no, I think that's it. Like we said earlier, we'll get, if anyone wants some of the code that we showed to implement in your own data studio reports, that'll be available. And like we said, if you have client reports you want us to look at, shoot me a message on LinkedIn, and we'll give you some of our recommendations on how we would improve it.
Great, Jens. Thank you very much. So, John, thank you a lot for sharing your time, knowledge, for your sharings, resources, your great presentation. I really enjoyed watching and listening to this. Friends, it's really nice to have you here watching, asking questions, and just being here. Thank you very much, and have a great day and week, guys. And I'm looking forward to seeing you at our future online events. So, see you. Goodbye.